I loved their first period last night.
I agree.
I thought they were outstanding.
I thought they looked really good. If they get a goal early on,
that's the problem, though. Noodles is like they get to the first intermission, they're down 1-0, and then they run into penalty troubles, and then the game was over. And when Caulfield scored, for them to give up a third that quickly, it was over. Like, see you later, pack your bags. The third was irrelevant. But if I'm Ducharme today, Johnny, I'm watching the first. I thought they were physical. I thought they were agitating. I thought they were forechecking. I thought they were in it. And I know it's 20 minutes of a 60-minute game, but glass half full. If I'm Montreal, I'm looking at the first period and saying if we can do that more often and score first, easier said than done, you might be able to stay in some of these games.
Yeah, so that's an if, then you might be able to stay in the game. I mean, that's hardly a ringing endorsement after game one. And I'll give you 12 minutes of the first period. I thought they were clearly the better team to start. The chance a minute into Gallagher, the Josh Anderson wide drive, all that traffic around in front, scrumming it up around Marc-Andre Fleury, all really good. And we can talk about the goals against and, a missed play on the faceoff and a screen that wasn't blocked out by Gustafsson, who wouldn't be on the ice unless it was an icing for a defensive zone faceoff. You got Sherrod jumping out of the box and racing back into his own end, thinking he's playing defense. We should just stand there playing left wing, and then Martinez goals doesn't go in. Like, those are things you can clean up, and that's not that hard to see Montreal doing that. My bigger concern would be, if I'm a fan of the Montreal Canadiens, is the middle, from the 10-minute mark until about 10 minutes left in the game, those 40 minutes, how are we going to create more offense? I can clean up the defensive side of things, although Petrie's injury and Shea Weber's wrist aggravation is not going to help at all. But I think you can clean that up with just, a little bit better attention to detail. But creating offense, they didn't create very much in those middle 40 minutes. And that, to me, is going to be a bigger challenge. Everyone thinks about the forecheck and the pace of Vegas, but they're also a very good defensive team. And that's my greater concern. I don't have as easy an answer for the offense as I do for cleaning up the defensive miscues.
Yeah, you make a great point, Johnny. I don't know if we've given Vegas's D enough love or credit.
How do you not? They dominate games.
I know, and obviously because it was on such display last night. Like, we talk about Shea Theodore, but do we really talk about him? You know what I mean? Like,
if you watched them last night, that one play he made to Martinez was
ridiculous,
unbelievable,
ridiculous.
So good.
I'm on my couch and I bit. Carey Price is I'm like, oh my God, he's got a one-timer in the slot. And it was just such a fantastic play. But Pietrangelo, he is so good, and just everything he does. And Martinez and Holden's a big, strong guy. Like, when I look at Vegas, and you're right, I thought it was over kind of after the first period. But their D are really skilled, and they get involved. And that's something that, if you want to talk about in-game adjustments, or at least adjustments after a game, I would think, is there anything that the forwards are, I was looking at, there is some missed assignments last night, set plays off of draws, but is there something that the forwards could do to try and maybe limit that D being involved that much?
Well, I mean, I suppose you can try to match up against them a little closer in the defensive zone, but
tighter.
I didn't think they did that bad of a job. I mean, it was 2 plays off faceoffs, which don't usually go in, and it was one scramble play on the great shot fake by Theodore out of a penalty box, as the penalty is expiring. So, it sounds like it's a lot, but it wasn't that much. And then another long cycle play where it ends up on Holden's stick. So I don't know if you're going to put that on the forwards. I think that's going to be a problem for Montreal the whole series, is how do they stop the cycle? I mean, Vegas, I think, is second in the playoffs in offensive zone time per game. And that's why. They get on the forecheck, they sustain it, they make you work, and then they eventually break you down. And whether it's a defenseman breaking down, then the forward covers for the defenseman, which leaves the defenseman that he was supposed to cover open, and on it goes. That's kind of what happened. And I mean, the biggest thing Montreal can do is hope for good health for Jeff Petrie and maybe in Shea Weber, which I'm not sure is going to happen in the next 24 hours. So I don't think there's a whole bunch they could do. I think if anything, they're going to have to try to figure out, again, easier said than done, how to navigate your way through the neutral zone. They did it for the first 7-8 minutes, but they didn't do it after that very much. And if you can't skate with speed and pass the puck up the ice, you're not going to get to play in the offensive zone very much unless they are able to do more of that, then you give any team enough time in the offensive zone, they eventually will break you down, and Vegas did that last night.
Johnny, we both played right wing, and you go through different phases where you're skating, not much is happening, you're not skating, some things are happening, you're total garbage. There's all different kind of phases. When I watch Anderson play for the Canadiens, he scored game 1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I thought this guy's going to go on a tear, and I don't think he's scored since. Where do you see his game? I know he's a big physical guy, and he did get in there on the forecheck a couple times, but he's got to be a factor for these guys if they're going to have any chance.
Yeah, and probably a tough comparison because Alex Tuch is such a big factor who plays a similar kind of role and a similar kind of style. Yeah. The thing about Josh Anderson, when you watch him close, though, is that he is unbelievably fast in a straight line. So he's very good off the rush. But we just talked about if you don't get it through the neutral zone with speed to him, he rarely scores goals in the offensive zone. You think a big guy like that on the forecheck in front of the net, he might be able to do a little something in the offensive zone off cycle. I mean, I called half their games this year. It just doesn't happen for him. He just doesn't have that kind of offensive game. Not a great feel and vision with the puck. He's a straight line guy.
That's shocking, Johnny, because he should be it's my simple recipe was get in there, hit, get the puck behind the net, or get it to my winger who can get it behind the net to the centerman and right to the slot. It's just such an easy recipe.
It's not his game. Like, he can go in there and hit, and he does that, and he will do that. But he just doesn't have a great feel. Like, oh, you were really good at getting open. Even though it was subtle, you weren't skating all over the ice, you're very good at getting open. He's not. Like, that it's just not his, like, it's right in front of him, he sees it. If it's not right in front of him, it's not necessarily there as much. So that's kind of been the story of his offensive game in his NHL career. He still could be effective, but he just doesn't show a lot unless it's off the rush. And whereas Alex Tuch, I think, is as good a third liner as there is in the league. He's
$925,000.
Wow, and they got him on as a side deal.
He was a throw-in where Eric Howla was the guy that really were grabbing.
Dumba. Yeah. Like, what are we doing here? It was crazy what they got out of him.
That's a 30 for 30, man. That whole thing.
Yeah, that expansion draft.
I was talking to my wife about it last night because we were sitting there watching, and she doesn't follow us closely, and she's like, "How are they this good?" And I honestly said to her, "They perfected the expansion draft. They perfected the rules that were applied to them.